Hey guys, tonight we wander into a place where the edges between waking and dreaming blur, and the forest seems to lean forward just to listen to you breathe. Lanterns line the path, not the kind you plug into a socket, but paper globes glowing with that warm orange firelight you can almost hear crackle. Each one dangles from a crooked post, swaying gently, even though the air is still. It's the kind of scene where you half expect a Studio Ghibli character to step out, wave, and offer you a rice ball. And then you remember, if this really were Fuel Japan, you probably wouldn't survive the hike without tripping on your sandals, spraining an ankle, and getting blamed for angering some woodland spirit. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I always love seeing how far these little bedtime journeys travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto the dirt path, each lantern lighting the way just far enough so you can see the next one ahead. The trees crowd close, tall cedars with bark, so deeply grooved it looks like wrinkled skin. They creak softly in the dark, and you can almost imagine them gossiping about you as you pass. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird lets out a single sharp cry, then goes quiet, as if realizing it interrupted something important. The whispers come next, not voices exactly, more like the hush of silk sliding together, or the sound of someone muttering in a language too old to learn. You tilt your head, trying to catch words, but they dissolve into the wind like smoke. These are the forest yokai, the watchers, the spirits who never care about your calendar notifications or your streaming queue. They thrive in this half-lit world where shadows stretch longer than they should, where roots curl across the path like claws. A historical fact comes to mind. In Heian-era Japan, travelers genuinely feared walking alone at night, not just because of bandits, but because of Hyakki Yagyo, the night parade of 100 demons. Imagine whole streets overtaken by spirits, a supernatural block party you definitely didn't want to crash. But historians still argue whether this parade was meant as literal belief or as a kind of cautionary tale against wandering after curfew. Either way, your footsteps tonight feel a little louder than they should, like maybe something is listening. A lantern flickers, dimming for a second before brightening again. You lean closer and swear you hear a giggle, high and thin, tucked inside the flame. A quirky tidbit slips into your memory. Japanese folklore sometimes describes lantern fire as foxfire, produced by kitsune to trick humans deeper into the woods. Which means this cozy glow could be guiding you, or it could be setting you up for a prank that ends with you lost until morning. No refunds. Still, you keep walking, because the path seems to want you. Every lantern you pass burns brighter, as if encouraging you forward. A little moth thuds against one, its wings briefly catching the light before it vanishes again into the dark. For a moment, you envy it, carefree, no bedtime stories to tell, no channel algorithm to fight, just chasing flames until exhaustion wins. The whispers grow louder, gathering into shapes. You don't see the yokai, but you feel them, some perched in the branches, some slinking along the undergrowth, some leaning right up behind you before vanishing when you turn. They're not here to scare you. They're here to tell you things. Old things. Bedtime things. Your mind drifts to how ancient villagers might have experienced this same forest. No headlamps, no glow from a distant city. Just total blackness broken by occasional lanterns. The human imagination does funny tricks in the dark. It makes monsters out of owls and legends out of shadows. The debate still lingers in scholarship. Were yokai real beliefs, or were they metaphorical stand-ins for fears like disease, famine, or the sheer unpredictability of nature? Maybe both. Maybe people needed their bedtime monsters just as much as you need a bedtime story now. The path bends. The lanterns curve with it, and you notice a strange pattern. Every third lantern sways slightly, even though no breeze touches the others. They're like metronomes, guiding your pace, left foot, right foot, glow, shadow. It feels orchestrated, as though the forest itself is keeping time for the story it's about to tell. Then the first real figure appears. At the farthest reach of the lantern glow, a silhouette tilts its head. You freeze, the hairs on your arms bristling, but it doesn't advance. Instead, It fades back into darkness like steam evaporating into air. Was it a yokai? A trick of the light? Or just your brain, a little too eager to turn folklore into reality? You'll never know. And honestly, the mystery is more comforting than the answer. You keep walking, and the whispers soften, almost like applause, quiet approval that you didn't bolt, that you're willing to keep moving deeper. Your footsteps now echo in a rhythm, like the forest is hollow beneath you, or maybe like something beneath the soil is humming along. You glance down once and swear you see a faint shimmer between the roots, like an eye closing before you can be sure it was open. You tell yourself it's fine. After all, bedtime stories need a little tension, right? Otherwise you'd be asleep already, drooling on your pillow, and I'd be out of a job. So you let the whispers curl around you, let the lanterns guide you onward, and let the forest yokai know you're ready for whatever sleepy tale they want to unfold next. The path carries you down a gentle slope until the ground softens underfoot, turning damp, springy, and just a little treacherous. The air changes too, cooler, heavier, carrying the scent of moss and water. Lanterns still hover along the edges, but now their glow bends and shimmers against a ribbon of silver ahead. You hear it before you see it. The steady hush of water sliding over smooth stones, the occasional plop of a frog that decided you were too clumsy to share space with. When you step closer, the river widens like an unrolled scroll. Moonlight clings to the ripples, and for a second it looks like the whole surface is scribbled with calligraphy. You lean in and realize the whispers you thought were from the forest have changed. They're singing now, a low hum, playful and oddly melodic, like lullabies carried on water instead of voices. That's when you remember the kappa, mischievous little river yokai, cucumber-loving and bull-headed, half-child, half-turtle creatures that could yank you underwater just for fun. Ancient records describe them with shells on their backs and hollow dishes on their heads filled with water, the source of their power. Spill that dish and they weaken. Bow to them, and out of politeness, they bow back, spilling their own strength right onto the ground. A clever loophole if you ever find yourself wrestling with one, which I don't recommend as a bedtime activity. You glance at the water and swear you see movement, a ripple against the current, a shadow ducking below the surface. Your mind races with a quirky detail that some old texts say kappa were blamed for drownings and livestock disappearing into rivers. Others claim they help irrigate rice fields, teaching humans about water flow. Historians still argue whether these stories were warnings to keep kids away from dangerous rivers, or villagers genuinely thought cucumbers were like bribes to aquatic spirits. Either way, your hand tightens on your bag, as though you had a cucumber tucked away, just in case. The lullaby grows clearer. It's not words you recognize, but the rhythm is soothing, like the thrum of a washing machine if the washing machine had a degree in hypnotism. The water laps at the bank, and for a moment you imagine small webbed hands tapping drums under the surface, keeping time. You crouch down, dipping your fingers in. It's colder than you expect, biting enough to make you flinch, but smooth too, like liquid glass. Something brushes against your hand, not slimy, not sharp, just a nudge. You jerk back, and ripples dart away in perfect concentric circles, as if whoever touched you is laughing underwater. To calm yourself, you let your thoughts drift to a historical snapshot. In Edo period Japan, riverbanks like this were lined with tea houses. Travelers stopped, rested, and shared stories, probably warning each other about what might be lurking just beneath the surface. The kappa became part of that social glue, half warning, half entertainment. Like telling kids today not to run with scissors by saying, "If you do, a turtle boy will drag you into the river." Honestly, it's a marketing technique that worked for centuries. You sit back on the damp bank, listening. The lullaby shifts, almost like the kappa have sensed your fatigue. The notes slow down, each one stretching longer, humming deep in your chest like a vibrating string. The moon drifts higher, and its reflection pools on the water until it looks like a glowing coin waiting to be plucked. For a moment, you wonder if the kappa are singing to moon instead of you, and you've just wandered in on their night concert. The whispers tease your imagination. You think of the fringe tidbit that kappa were said to have a fondness for sumo wrestling. Picture it. Little turtle spirits in loincloths, demanding a match by the riverbank. You have no chance, of course. They're deceptively strong, but the idea of them bowing, losing their water, and sheepishly excusing themselves mid-match feels like something straight out of a bedtime comedy sketch. The river keeps humming, and you realize you've started syncing your breathing to it. Inhale with the ripples, exhale with the lull. A frog croaks once, as if to remind you that not all performers are supernatural. The lantern beside you flares brighter for just a heartbeat, illuminating the water more clearly. You swear you catch a glimpse of something just on the surface. A wide, flat head, round eyes gleaming, and a quick flash of a grin before it slips away. You're not scared. Not really. If anything, the presence feels oddly reassuring, like someone keeping watch on the water's edge. The song continues, and though you don't understand the words, the tone tells you enough. Stay, rest, dream. You lie back on the mossy bank, the lantern above you painting your face with warm gold. The river whispers beside you, and in the half-dream you let yourself drift toward, you imagine Kappa paddling by, carrying little stories in their shells. Stories about farmers who outwitted them, children who befriended them, travelers who learned to bow at just the right time. Maybe the Kappa aren't here to drown you tonight. Maybe they're just here to sing you to sleep, one ripple at a time. The river fades behind you, its hum still clinging faintly to your ears, like a song you can't quite shake even though the source is gone. The lanterns reclaim their rhythm, pulling you back into the forest. The ground rises now, crunchy with gravel instead of moss, and somewhere up ahead the path divides. It's subtle, two narrow tracks bending apart like polite rivals who agree to avoid eye contact. Right where the fort begins, you notice a shape, long tail, pointed ears, and eyes glowing faint as coals. The fox is waiting. Not a regular fox, mind you, but one of them. Kitsune, tricksters, shapeshifters, and occasional matchmakers who pop up at crossroads like stage magicians. You remember the stories, 9 tales if they're ancient, fewer if they're just starting out in the supernatural gig. And of course, the cliché, disguising themselves as beautiful humans, usually women, luring men into elaborate romances before revealing the whole surprise. I'm actually a fox spirit thing. If you think your dating history is messy, imagine explaining that one to your parents. The kitsune tilts its head, and for a second you think it's smiling. Then it flicks its tail, and the lanterns on both paths flare at once, daring you to choose. This is exactly the kind of situation folklore loves to exaggerate. Pick the wrong path, and you'll end up chasing illusions until sunrise. Pick the right one, and maybe you'll hear a story that makes sense. Spoiler alert, neither path is safe from nonsense, because kitsune don't really do straightforward. A mainstream fact floats up in your memory. During Japan's Edo period, foxes were seen as messengers of Inari, the Shinto deity of rice, fertility, and prosperity. Shrines dedicated to Inari still overflow with fox statues, often wearing little red bibs like they're off to a picnic. Historians still argue whether people genuinely believed foxes were divine agents or whether the statues were more symbolic, a way of channeling respect for agriculture into something tangible. Either way, foxes had the kind of brand recognition that would make modern influencers jealous. The kitsune steps forward, and the air shifts, smelling faintly of smoke or maybe incense, or maybe the fried snack someone left too close to a lantern. You blink, and suddenly it's not a fox anymore. A figure stands there instead, draped in a kimono patterned with pale blossoms, hair cascading like ink across her shoulders. Her eyes still glow faintly, though slight giveaway. Kitsune illusions are good, but they can't always resist flexing with the special effects. She raises a hand, beckoning you forward. You know better, of course, but what's bedtime without bad decisions? You take a cautious step. She smiles wider, and the lantern beside her trembles as if caught in laughter. Here's a quirky tidbit. Kitsune were said to possess humans by slipping inside through their fingernails or even by, let's just say, other creative entry points. Possession can make someone act strange, crave bizarre foods, or babble in riddles. Families sometimes called priests to exorcise a fox, but occasionally they just shrugged and said, "Well, guess our kid's married to a fox now." Folklore wasn't always about resolution. It was often about making peace with absurdity. You wonder, briefly, if you're about to get fox-possessed, but instead she begins to speak. The words are low, almost whispered, like she's leaning against the edge of your dreams rather than standing in the path. She tells of travelers who wandered crossroads like this and never returned, until weeks later, showing up dazed, pockets empty, but insisting they'd only been gone a few hours. Some claimed they lived in kitsune palaces of illusion, dining on banquets that turned to twigs when the spell broke. Historians still debate whether these tales were warnings against bandits or genuine attempts to explain the disorientation of getting lost in rural landscapes. Personally, I'd lean toward bandits, but the fox spirit option does make for better bedtime storytelling. You catch yourself swaying as she talks, not out of fear, but because her voice curls around you like smoke. The lanterns blur, doubling in your vision. You feel your knees loosen, your shoulders slacken, and you wonder if you're being lulled into her trick. Then, with a sudden laugh, a sound sharp as snapping twigs, the kitsune shift again. The woman collapses into the fox shape, tails fanning behind her like the spokes of a wheel. She dashes into the left-hand path, vanishing in a streak of shadow and light. You stand at the fork, waiting. Silence hangs heavy. Then, faintly from the left-hand trail, comes a sound. Not laughter this time, but a lullaby. Soft, almost mocking, but still soothing. A bedtime joke wrapped in melody. You decide not to chase. That's the thing about kitsune. They always want you to follow, and it never ends well. Instead, you take the right path. Behind you, the laughter echoes once more, but it fades quickly, like she's satisfied you made the boring choice. Or maybe she's still watching, just hidden, tail curled around herself like a satisfied cat. Your footsteps crunch onward, lanterns glowing steady again. But you know the kitsune has marked you. Once they appear, their stories follow you, weaving into your sleep and waking hours alike. For now, though, you've escaped with only a whisper of a trick, and the lingering sound of a fox laughing itself into your dreams. The gravel crunches under your feet until, almost without warning, it gives way to softer earth again. You notice how the lanterns grow fewer, spaced wider apart, as though the forest itself wants to test whether you'll keep moving without so much guidance. Between their pools of light lies thicker shadow, the kind you could mistake for a wall if you weren't careful. And just when the darkness seems to swallow the last glow, something hops. At first you think it's a frog, common enough in these damp woods. But no frog ever bounced like that, upright, with one big eye blinking slowly at you, and a tongue hanging out as if caught mid-laugh. The thing tilts, balances on its single handle of the leg, and you recognize it immediately. The castle-obake, a paper umbrella that's lived too long, soaked in too many storms, and finally decided, fine, I'll join the monster union. It hops closer, its patched claw fluttering like tired wings, and lets out a chuckle. It's not sinister. It's the kind of laugh you'd hear from a friend who just told a bad joke and can't believe you didn't laugh harder. Here's a mainstream historical fact to anchor you. In Edo, Japan, household objects were believed to gain spirits if they survived 100 years. Called tsukamagami, these everyday items, brooms, sandals, teapots, might spring to life, sometimes to seek revenge for neglect, sometimes just to mess around. Historians still argue whether people genuinely feared their furniture staging a coup, or whether these tales were cautionary reminders to respect what you own. Either way, the castle-obake is a class clown of the yokai world, hopping in tonight to lighten the mood. It hops again, landing beside one of the lanterns, and gives you a wide grin. Its single eye blinks once, twice, and then it leans in like it's about to share a secret. Instead, it blows a raspberry so exaggerated you can almost feel the spray. Not exactly threatening, just rude. You laugh despite yourself, because honestly, what else can you do when ambushed by a giggling umbrella? Quirky tidbit time. Storytellers often use castle-obake for comic relief in woodblock prints and kabuki theater. Imagine centuries-old horror comedies, where a group of samurai battle through terrifying demons, only for a one-eyed umbrella to stumble in and trip over itself. If Yokai were a high school, castle-obake would be the kid juggling apples in the cafeteria, hoping someone notices. The umbrella bobs again, then points its tongue toward the shadows as if saying, "Come on, don't stop now." Against your better judgment, you follow. The path curves, and suddenly the lanterns are gone altogether. Only the castle-obake's odd glow remains, its cloth catching the moonlight in flashes. The forest is utterly still except for your footsteps and the occasional squeaky chuckle of your umbrella guide. Somewhere in that darkness, you wonder if this is a point of Yokai's existence, not to terrify, but to keep you from taking the night too seriously. A scholarly debate even touches on this. Were yokai like the Castle-Obe conventions of the merchant classes, a way to poke fun at the endless seriousness of religious or noble life? The records don't settle it, but the idea of shopkeepers turning their umbrellas into stand-up comedians feels oddly believable. You stumble on a root, mutter something unrepeatable under your breath, and when you look up, the Castle-Obe is rolling, yes, rolling, on its side in silent laughter. It's mocking you, absolutely, but in the kind way a sibling does, not an enemy. And strangely, the more it laughs, the sleepier you feel. Each chuckle vibrates through the forest like a lull, shaking loose your tension. When the giggles die down, the umbrella straightens itself and stands still, its eye blinking slowly. For a moment it looks tired, as if even its jokes have limits. It hops once more toward a new patch of lantern light ahead, then stops, waiting. You realize this is its farewell. It only escorts you this far. With a final waggle of its tongue, it tips sideways in a bow, then collapses flat, lifeless again, just a simple old umbrella resting on the ground. You hesitate. Should you pick it up? Carry it? Maybe you'll need an umbrella later. But then you remember the stories. Never take a yokai home unless you're ready for your furniture to start filing complaints. So you leave it, stepping back into the lantern glow with a smile you didn't expect. The night feels lighter now, the shadows less oppressive. The whispers of yokai don't sound quite so ominous when you know some of them are just out here practicing their comedy routines. You keep walking, humming a little tune that almost matches the rhythm of your hopping companion, and the forest seems to hum along. The laughter of the Castle-Obe fades behind you, swallowed by the hush of the forest. The lanterns return, closer together now, like breadcrumbs laid to keep you steady. You follow them uphill, the slope gradual but enough to quicken your breath. The air shifts again, warmer, tinged with dust and the faint sweetness of old wood. You smell tatami mats before you see them, that distinct grassy earth scent rising from woven straw. And then, out of the trees, an inn appears. It's not grand, not the bustling roadside kind where travelers clatter in with stories and sake. This one is older, quieter, sagging under the weight of too many seasons. The wooden beams lean slightly. The sliding doors groan on their tracks, and the paper walls bear the faint scars of candle smoke. Yet lanterns glow in every window, as though someone expects you, though the silence inside says otherwise. You step on the veranda, your footfalls sinking softly against the boards. A breeze stirs the shoji screen ahead, and for just a second, you think you hear tiny footsteps running across the hall. Not heavy, not adult, childlike. Quick pitter-patters, then gone. This is the domain of the Zashikiwarashi. Child spirits, keepers of households, said to bring prosperity if treated well, or misfortune if ignored. They're not here to scare you, at least not outright. They linger in inns and homes, laughing, whispering, and tugging gently at your sleeves while you sleep. Historical records mention them as far back as the Iwate region, where noble families swore their fortunes rose only when these ghostly children played in their tatami rooms. Historians still argue whether these tales emerged from actual sightings or from a need to explain why some households thrived while others fell into ruin. You slide the door open and step into the dim interior. Tatami mats stretch across the floor, warm but intact, their edges frayed where generations of feet once shuffled. The air smells of incense long burned out, faint but clinging like a memory. The inn feels deserted, yet you sense company. Shadows moving just out of reach, giggles bouncing down empty corridors. Then a laugh, clear, high, right beside you. You turn, but the hall is empty. Another laugh follows, behind you this time, paired with the unmistakable shuffle of bare feet. Your heart kicks, but not from fear. It's almost playful, like being teased by a younger sibling. Quirky tidbit. Some households left out toys or sweets to please their Zashikiwarashi. Red bean cakes, marbles, little carved dolls. A way of saying we know you're here and we like having you around. Imagine that. A ghost bribed with candy, like Halloween every night. And honestly, it seems to work. Families who ignored the spirits often claimed their fortunes collapsed, while those who respected them thrived in both wealth and peace. You walk further in, your socks sliding softly over the mats. Then reveals room after room, some lined with faded scrolls, others holding low tables set with bowls that have long since dried. But in one chamber, a cushion rests slightly out of place, as though someone small just sat there. A faint handprint dents the tatami, small enough to belong to a child of 6 or 7. You crouch, running your fingers lightly over the indentation. Warmth lingers. Before you can pull back, you feel a tug at your sleeve, gentle, insistent. You glance sideways and catch a glimpse of pale skin, dark hair, and wide eyes just for a moment before the figure darts into the shadows, dissolving like smoke. Your breath steadies. They're testing you, seeing if you're the kind of guest worth keeping. So you bow your head slightly, murmuring thanks. You don't have sweets or toys to offer, but respect is currency too. Then sighs around you, with creaking in approval, as if the very beings recognize your gesture. A scholarly debate floats into your mind. Was the Shiki Warashi imagined as household gods disguised as children, or as the restless souls of real children who once lived there? Folklore never decided, and perhaps it didn't need to. What mattered was that their presence meant the difference between prosperity and despair, between warmth and emptiness. The inn around you hums with that duality, caught between decay and laughter. The footsteps return, circling you now. A small laugh rings out, followed by another, then 2 at once. There are more of them, perhaps half a dozen, invisible but very present. One brushes against your shoulder, another tugs gently at your hair, and suddenly, the inn feels alive, crowded with unseen hosts. You chuckle despite yourself. Who knew ghostly children could make such effective party entertainment? Eventually, the energy softens. The laughter quiets to murmurs, then to whispers you can't quite catch. A sliding door opens on its own, revealing a lantern-lit exit on the far side of the inn. You know this is their way of guiding you on, having decided you're an acceptable guest, maybe even a lucky one. You bow once more, stepping to the hall toward the light. Behind you, the tatami mats rustle with the sound of tiny feet resuming their games, giggles bubbling like a lullaby you carry with you. The inn exhales, content to let you go, yet you can't shake the feeling it has marked you with its quiet blessing. Then fades behind you, its warm lanterns shrinking until there are no more than fireflies in the dark. The air grows sharper as you climb, thinner and tinged with pine resin and cold stone. You know before you see it that you're heading toward the mountains, those same ridges people in old Japan believe were home not only to hermits and monks, but to something wilder. The path narrows into switchbacks, zigzagging upward. Your breath clouds and chill, and even the lanterns seem reluctant to follow, their glow weak against the looming peaks. The silence here is heavier than in the forest below, a silence that makes you aware of every step, every creak of your joints, every little gasp you didn't mean to make so loud. And then, high above, wings beat once. You freeze. The sound is leathery, but not bat-like, bigger, measured. The kind of flap you'd expect from something that knows how to circle prey before landing. When you glance upward, you catch a silhouette crossing the moon. Broad wings, a long nose, feathers bristling like black flames. The Tengu has arrived. Tengu, mountain spirits half bird, half human, often depicted with crimson faces, and noses so long they could poke out an eye if they weren't careful. Some stories make them protectors of sacred places. Others cast them as tricksters who delighted in leading monks astray. A mainstream historical note. During the Kamakura period, as warrior monks gained power, Tengu stories often portrayed them as arrogant priests punished by being transformed into these bird demons. Historians still argue whether this was meant as satire against real clergy or as a cautionary tale about spiritual pride. Either way, the image stuck, giant nose, winged beings perched on cliff sides, watching travelers with disdainful smirks. The Tengu descends, landing with a crunch of gravel a few yards ahead. His wings fold behind him, and though his face is in shadow, you see the nose first, sharp, ridiculous, and yet somehow regal. He leans on a staff taller than you, tapping against the stones with a rhythm that feels deliberate, like he's counting down something only he knows. Why do you climb? His voice seems to ask, not aloud, but in the way the air vibrates around him. You don't answer, not because you're scared, but because the mountain demands silence. Instead, you bow slightly. He snorts, feathers ruffling, as though unimpressed but mildly entertained. A quirky tidbit drifts through memory. Tengu were said to kidnap children, monks, or arrogant samurai, whisking them into the mountain for days or even years. When the captives returned, they often claimed they'd learned secret martial arts or divine wisdom, though sometimes they just babbled nonsense. Villagers never knew whether to fear the Tengu or seek them out, hoping for a shortcut to enlightenment. Imagine signing up for a spiritual retreat and realizing your guru is a red-nosed birdman with a temper. Refunds not guaranteed. The Tengu raises his staff and taps the ground. A wind gusts suddenly, whipping your hair and nearly knocking you off balance. He doesn't move closer, but the air itself seems to lean against you, testing your strength. You plant your feet, refusing to topple, and after a long moment the wind eases. His feathers relax again. A silent acknowledgement. You're not entirely hopeless. You think about the scholarly debates. Some researchers argue Tengu were originally based on Chinese heavenly dogs, Tiango, mythic creatures that devour the sun or moon during eclipses. Others believe Tengu evolved from Shinto mountain gods, guardians of wilderness later demonized by Buddhism. The truth is probably tangled in both, like roots winding around the same rock. And right now, none of it matters. What matters is that the Tengu in front of you clearly enjoys making you squirm. He shifts, wings spreading slightly, then folds them again. His beak-like mouth opens, and what comes out isn't words but a sound halfway between a call and a sigh. It resonates low in your chest, making your ribs vibrate. It's not unfriendly. It's not welcoming either. It's simply instruction, as if to say, endure, breathe, keep climbing. And so you do, step after step, stone after stone, while he lingers at your side without quite walking beside you. Sometimes he's ahead, perched on a boulder. Sometimes behind, wings brushing branches. Sometimes gone entirely, only to reappear on the next ridge, waiting. You begin to feel like you're not walking alone, but under supervision, like a teacher following a particularly clumsy student through gym class. The path steepens, your thighs burning, but the Tengu doesn't offer help. He just watches, nose casting its long shadow across the rocks. Strangely, the struggle calms you. Each breath steadies, each footstep becomes a rhythm, and the mountain seems to fall into sync with your body. Maybe this is the lesson, the thin line between exhaustion and clarity, between nightmare and wisdom. Finally, after what feels like hours but might only be minutes, the slope eases. You find yourself at a plateau, a flat stone clearing where the moon spills like milk across the ground. The Tengu lands once more, folding his wings neatly. He taps his staff again, then rests it. His head tilts, eyes narrowing. For the first time, you think you see approval flicker there. Then he leaps, wings exploding outward, and soars into the sky. Within seconds, he's a shadow against the moon again, shrinking until he's gone. Only a few feathers remain on the stones, drifting like scraps of parchment. You stand there, chest heaving, realizing you've passed some invisible test. The Tengu didn't give you wisdom in words, but in effort, in proving to yourself you could keep moving even when the air thinned and your body complained. And that lesson, whispered by wings, feels like the kind that will stick long after the night ends. The plateau lingers behind you, feathers scattered like half-burned letters, and the path tilts downward again. Gravel gives way to softer earth, cushioned with needles from cedar trees, so ancient their trunks look ribbed like elephant legs. You step carefully, half expecting the Tengu to reappear, but instead the silence shifts into a different sort of tension. The mountain breathes slower here, heavier, and with it comes a faint, sweet scent of incense. Not from any shrine you can see, but curling invisibly through the forest. Your eyelids weigh down. Each step feels dreamier, like the path has turned into a conveyor belt sliding you along whether you like it or not. And then you notice it. A figure at the bend, seated cross-legged on a stone, body glowing faintly as if lit from inside. A monk? A hermit? No, the mouth gives it away. Wide. Too wide. It stretches farther the longer you look, like someone tugging at the corners of a mask. This is not a kindly priest. This is a Rokuro Kubi, a spirit famous for bending the rules of anatomy. Some legends describe their necks elongating like supernatural telescopes, craning through windows or curling around tree trunks. Others, like the one sitting before you, use mouths stretched far beyond reason, either to frighten or to feed, or to whisper things best left unspoken. She tilts her head and smiles, which would be reassuring if the smile didn't extend her ears. The incense scent grows stronger. Your head feels woolly, like you've inhaled a lullaby. She pats the rock beside her, an invitation. Against your better judgment, you sit. A mainstream historical fact slips in here. During the Edo period, storytellers categorized yokai into kaiden, eerie tales often told during summer nights to cool the blood. Rokuro Kubi became one of the staple characters in these collections, sometimes shown as tragic women cursed by karma or vengeful spirits, other times as mischievous pranksters who terrified travelers. Historians still argue whether the stories were moral lessons about women straying from traditional roles, or simply the ghostly equivalent of campfire jump scares. The woman leans closer, her elongated smile trembling as though she's holding back laughter. She doesn't speak, not exactly. Instead, she exhales, a slow breath of incense that seeps into your lungs. The air tastes of sandalwood and faint copper, dizzying but strangely warm. Her eyes, dark and endless, blink lazily. A quirky tidbit. Some people believed Rokuro Kubi weren't spirits at all, but ordinary humans who transformed at night while their souls wandered. By day they looked like regular neighbors. By night their necks snaked around corners or their mouths widened to impossible dimensions. Imagine going to market, chatting with the kindly lady selling miso, and then discovering she's been spooking travelers with her jaw unhinged like a snake. Suddenly the neighborhood watch meetings would get very awkward. The incense grows stronger still. You slump forward, head bobbing, eyelids sliding shut. For a moment you're certain you've fallen asleep, but her laugh jolts you back. High, tinkling, and unsettlingly close to your ear, even though she hasn't moved. Her mouth stretches wider still, until it's more a crack than a face. The laugh continues until it blurs into words, though you're not sure they're in any language you know. Your heart hammers. You think of scholarly debates. Some researchers suggest Rokuro Kubi tales originated as metaphors for night terrors, those moments when your body is paralyzed but your mind conjures figures at the edge of the bed. Others argue they stem from fears of disease, elongated necks mirroring swollen glands, gaping mouths reflecting wasting illnesses. The truth, as usual, is somewhere in the overlap of fear, imagination, and a touch of the theatrical. You try to stand, but your legs refuse. The incense lulls too deeply, making the forest sway, like a slow pendulum. She notices, of course. Her hand rests on your arm. Cool, bony fingers pressing lightly. Not painful, just present. Her mouth opens wider still, and you glimpse the impossible depth of her throat. A black tunnel as endless as the mountain path itself. And then she sighs. A long, tired sound, the kind you make when you frighten yourself with your own reflection. She closes her mouth, shrinking it back to almost normal, though you know better now. She pats your arm gently, as though you're a child who's barely passed another lesson. The incense fades. Your head clears, and suddenly you're standing again, though you don't remember how. The rock is empty. Only the lingering perfume of sandalwood clings to your clothes. The forest feels cooler, emptier, as though relieved that she's gone. You walk on, legs shaky but moving. Somewhere above, an owl hoots, a sound so ordinary it feels like a gift. You realize the yokai of the mountains don't always harm you outright. Sometimes they just test whether you can sit in the presence of fear without collapsing entirely. And if you can, you earn the right to keep going. Still, you can't help a final joke slipping into your tired mind. If you ever see someone at the grocery store with a suspiciously wide grin, maybe just let them cut in line. Saves everyone a headache, and maybe a few incense-flavored nightmares. The incense lingers faintly in your nostrils, a ghost of sandalwood trailing behind you as the path winds deeper into the cedars. The slope grows gentle, almost merciful, as though the mountain finally acknowledges how drained you are. But just as you start to trust that softness, a new sound creeps in. The steady hush of water. Not the wild rush of a river, but the deliberate trickle of a garden stream. Steady enough to hypnotize. You follow it, feet crunching pine needles, until the trees part to reveal a narrow brook glimmering silver under the moon. Its banks are lined with moss, and stepping stones lead across, worn smooth by centuries of travelers. You squat, cupping your hands to sip, the water icy enough to make your teeth ache. That's when you hear it. High-pitched, almost childlike giggles coming from downstream. At first you think it's children playing, which would be absurd at this hour and in this place. Then you remember the warnings whispered in old folk tales. Don't trust laughter by water at night. You stand dripping and scan the bank. There, a shape squatting at the edge, its back curved, its skin pale greenish in the moonlight. A kappa. If Tengu are the aristocrats of mountain mischief, kappa are the prankster peasants of Japan's rivers and ponds. Squat, frog-like humanoids with shells on their backs, beak-like mouths, and, most importantly, a bowl-shaped depression in their skulls filled with water. That water, people said, was their life force. Spill it, and the kappa would weaken instantly. This one notices you. It grins, revealing teeth too sharp for comfort. Its top knot glistens with the precious water it carries, sloshing gently as it waddles closer. You try not to laugh, but the thought slips in. It looks like a grumpy toddler forced to wear a salad bowl on its head. A mainstream historical fact bubbles up. During the Edo period, official notices were sometimes posted in villages warning people to beware of kappa in nearby rivers. Some even specified safe swimming spots, as though acknowledging water safety hazards while giving them a supernatural spin. Historians still argue whether these warnings were meant literally, villagers truly fearing kappa, or whether they were clever ways of discouraging children from playing near dangerous currents. Either way, the myth functioned like a neon, no-diving sign written in folklore. The kappa tilts its head, eyeing you. Then it bows. Instinct takes over, you bow back. And instantly you understand why elders always said about a kappa. The water in its skull sloshes, spills, and drips down its face. It gasps, stumbling slightly, weakened by its own politeness. For a split second you almost feel bad, like you just outwitted a toddler at peekaboo. It huffs, crouching low, and instead of attacking, it begins to mutter, not in human words, but in wet croaks and burbles. Oddly, the cadence reminds you of a riddle. A quirky tidbit fits here. Kappa were often said to be obsessed with manners and riddles. They could be dangerous, drowning livestock or pulling people underwater, but they also loved contests, pranks, and challenges. Some legends even claimed you could befriend a kappa by sharing cucumbers, especially ones carved with your name. Honestly, it's the only monster in folklore you could probably bribe with sushi rolls. The creature points to the stream, then to you, then croaks again. You realize it's daring you, challenging you to cross the stepping stones while it waits. A silent game. If you stumble, maybe you'll be dragged under. If you succeed, perhaps you'll earn safe passage. You place your foot on the first stone. It rocks slightly, slick with moss, but you balance. The kappa cackles, hopping side to side, as though cheering for your potential failure. One stone, then another. The water hisses past, tugging at your ankles with invisible fingers. Halfway across, you pause, feeling the kappa's gaze burn into your back. Some scholars argue kappa myths may have originated from sightings of real creatures, perhaps river otters, which were playful, mischievous, and occasionally aggressive toward humans. Others suggest drowned bodies swollen by water inspired tales of strange river beings. Both theories make sense, but neither explains why so many legends emphasize the kappa's bizarre obsession with etiquette. Perhaps it's because fear and humor often dance hand in hand. A monster is scary when there's rules you can barely understand. You take the final leap, landing on the far bank. The kappa groans dramatically, slapping the water with its webbed hands in frustration. But then, surprise, it claps. A short, sharp applause, like a teacher begrudgingly impressed by a student who didn't completely flunk the test. It bows once more more carefully this time to avoid losing water, and waddles back into the stream. With a splash, it vanishes beneath the current, leaving only ripples behind. You breathe again. The brook's hush returns, now softer, less menacing. The stepping stones glisten behind you like teeth in the moonlight, but you're safely across. You realize the Kappa wasn't just a threat. It was another examiner, testing whether you could move with balance, grace, and maybe a little wit. As you press forward into the forest, you shake your head. First a bird demon with a nose like a ski slope, then a stretchy-necked incense whisperer, and now a salad bowl-headed river gremlin. It's starting to feel like the mountain is less a wilderness and more an audition panel. One slip and you're out, but so far you're still in the game. The forest thickens again, swallowing the silver glint of the stream until you hear nothing but your own footsteps. The air changes, less crisp, more humid, as though the mountain holds a hidden swamp. Your lantern light paints shapes on the trunks, long shadows that seem to bend when you're not looking. You stop. There's a prickle at the back of your neck, the ancient instinct that tells you you're not alone. And sure enough, when you glance sideways, a woman stands just beyond the light. Her kimono is tattered, hanging heavy with what looks like damp earth. Her hair spills forward, concealing her face. She doesn't move. You remember enough yokai tales to know what this might be. An onryo, a vengeful spirit. The kind of ghost that wasn't content with haunting one house, but dragged her fury across entire villages. Her silence weighs heavier than shouting ever could. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your brain, uninvited but steadying. Onryo became a major figure in Japanese drama, especially kabuki theater, during the Edo period. Audiences loved the trope of a wronged woman returning from the dead to torment her betrayer. The kabuki actors exaggerated it. Long hair, white face, slow glide across the stage, so much that the image still shapes horror cinema today. Historians still argue whether these roles reflected genuine social anxieties about women's limited rights, or whether they were simply juicy entertainment for crowds who adored a good revenge plot. The woman shifts, just barely, enough that her hair parts and one pale eye gleams. It locks onto yours. The lantern trembles in your hand, flame fluttering nervously. You consider running, but your feet root in place. A quirky tidbit. People once believed that onryo were so powerful their wrath could influence real-world disasters, earthquakes, plagues, even political upheavals. One famous case involves Sugawara no Michizane, a scholar politician who died in exile. After his death, calamity struck the capital, and people concluded his angry spirit was responsible. To calm him, they enshrined him as a god of learning. Imagine failing your exams and deciding to blame not yourself, but an undead politician from centuries earlier. Convenient, if nothing else. The onryo drifts closer, her sleeves brushing the ground like waves. You hear no footsteps, only the faint hiss of fabric. When she's near enough that the cold radiates off her, she tilts her head. Her mouth opens, not to scream, but to exhale. A chilling breath fogs the lantern glass. For a moment, you expect fury, curses, maybe even claws. But instead she whispers. The words are soft, almost tender, though you can't decipher them. They might not even be words, just syllables stretched thin. The effect is stranger than rage. It's sorrow, as though she wants to pour her endless grief into you and see if you'll drown in it. Your own chest tightens. For an instant, you feel her memories, like water poured into your lungs. Betrayal, loneliness, the weight of injustice pressing like stones. It's overwhelming, but not unbearable. You let it wash over, reminding yourself it isn't yours. You are here to listen, not to be consumed. Scholars debate this. 2. Were onryo tales warnings about karma, teaching that cruelty would return with supernatural interest? Or were they ways to process communal trauma, giving form to the grief society couldn't otherwise acknowledge? Theories overlap, but one thing is clear. The ghost's power lies in making the living confront what they'd rather ignore. The woman's whisper fades. Her head lowers, hair veiling her face once more. Slowly she steps back. With each retreat, her outline thins, edges dissolving into the mist. By the time you blink, she's gone, leaving only a faint chill in the night air. You stand alone again, heart hammering but intact. The lantern steadies. The silence doesn't feel as heavy anymore. Just the usual hush of a mountain that has seen too much. As you walk on, you can't help but mutter under your breath. Next time, could we maybe get a ghost that just hands out coupons or something? But the mountain doesn't answer, only rolls another breeze across your path, nudging you onward. The trees thin again, giving way to a rocky ledge where the wind blows sharp and clean, tasting of granite and distant snow. You pause, lantern raised, watching the sky above stretch into an endless black curtain pierced by stars. It would be peaceful, if not for the sudden rattle that rises from the shadows ahead. At first you think it's just loose pebbles rolling downhill. But then the rhythm sharpens, a deliberate clack like bone against stone. From the dark steps a figure no taller than a child, yet carrying the presence of someone far older. His face is skeletal, cheeks hollow, skin stretched thin. He grins, but the grin looks borrowed, like he's practicing an expression he saw humans wear. This is a Gashidakuro, though not the colossal, 15-story skeleton yokai that legends sometimes describe. No, this is one of the smaller shades that precede the giant form, a hungry phantom cobbled together from human bones. In some stories, they rattle their teeth at night to warn or to mock those who dare travel alone. The rattle grows louder as he steps closer, jaw working in a steady beat. It's not threatening, not yet, more like a lullaby gone wrong. A mainstream historical fact steadies your nerves. Tales of giant skeletons, especially Gashidakuro, gained traction during the late 10th century, often linked with times of famine and war. When mass deaths left bones scattered and unburied, the idea that they might reassemble themselves into monsters wasn't far-fetched for grieving survivors. Historians still argue whether these stories arose purely as metaphors for social collapse, or whether they reflected actual rituals designed to ward off restless dead. The little skeleton tilts his head, eye sockets glinting with faint blue fire. Then, oddly, he sits cross-legged right in front of you, mimicking the way you sat with the incense-whispering woman earlier. He taps one finger bone against his shin in a steady rhythm, almost like a drummer waiting for you to join in. A quirky tidbit. Some regions claimed you could pacify skeleton spirits by offering them salt or sake, tokens of hospitality even the dead appreciated. One story even suggests that if you made a skeleton laugh, it would lose interest in haunting you. Which raises the awkward question, what kind of stand-up routine works best for an audience with no diaphragm? You sit too, slowly, unsure if refusing would be seen as an insult. The bones keep tapping. The rhythm sinks into your chest, echoing your heartbeat until the two nearly align. It's eerie, yes, but also strangely soothing, like the mountain is reminding you. Life and death are just alternating beats of the same song. The Gashidakuro leans forward, opening his jaw wide. Instead of roar, you hear a low hum, resonant and deep, vibrating through the stone. It's a sound of hunger, yes, but also of memory, as though he's carrying the echoes of all those who never got to finish their stories. You think of the scholarly debates. Were yokai like this mere inventions, or ways of keeping ancestral grief alive? Perhaps both. After all, grief demands shape. Give it bones, and it can at least rattle instead of silently consuming you. For a moment, you consider pulling some rice from your pouch, but then you recall the old trick, humor. So you whisper the first ridiculous thought that pops into your head. Something about him needing better skincare, because his cheekbones are showing a little too much. The skeleton freezes. Then the jaw rattles again, faster, sharper, and suddenly you realize it's laughter. A dry, clacking laugh that echoes against the cliff walls. He leans back, shoulders shaking, every bone vibrating like wind chimes in a storm. The laughter dies down slowly, fading into the steady rhythm once more. He nods as though satisfied. Then, with surprising grace, he rises. The blue light in his sockets flickers, softens, and finally extinguishes. He collapses into a heap of bones that scatter across the ground, harmless as driftwood. The wind sweeps in, lifting a few bones over the ledge, carrying them down into the unseen valley. The rest lie quiet, no longer rattling. Your chest loosens with relief. Another test pass. By humor, of all things. You stand and brush the dust from your knees. Ahead, The mountain path gleams faintly, inviting. You mutter to yourself, if the next yokai asks me to sing karaoke, I'm quitting. The wind carries your words away. But for once, it doesn't feel like the mountain is laughing at you. The ledge narrows, curling back into dense undergrowth. The wind softens, replaced by a hush that feels almost padded, as though the trees themselves are muffling sound. You push through branches until the ground dips into a hollow. There, in the dim light of your lantern, stand dozens of small stone figures lined neatly in rows, their faces smoothed by centuries of weather. At first you think they're just Jizo statues, those gentle guardians often placed by roadsides to protect travelers and children. But then one of them moves. Not much, just a tilt of the head, as if acknowledging you. Another shifts, its mossy smile widening. And then one by one, the little figures begin to stir, their stone robes rustling like gravel sliding. Karakasobake, you realize, though these are strangers still, objects given spirit after long years of use. Tsukumagami, old umbrellas, sandals, and yes, even statues, rumored to wake to life after 100 years, eager to play tricks on anyone who stumbled across them. One statue hops down from its plinth, landing with a clack. Its grin is crooked, but somehow welcoming. Another wiggles free, brushing moss from its shoulders. Soon a dozen surround you, no taller than your waist, each shuffling closer with the innocent mischief of children trying not to laugh. A mainstream historical fact anchors you. Tsukumagami tales emerged strongly during the Heian and Muromachi periods, reflecting a culture where objects were cherished for longevity. When everyday tools broke down, people sometimes held rituals before discarding them, honoring their spirit. Historians still argue whether stories of animated umbrellas and sandals were warnings against wastefulness or light-hearted reminders to treat possessions with care. One statue coughs, and the sound is like pebbles tumbling in a jar. Another raises its stubby arms, as if beckoning you to dance. You can't help it. You chuckle. They respond instantly, clapping their stone hands in approval. A quirky tidbit. Some old scrolls show Tsukumagami parading through towns in wild processions, objects turn spirits marching like drunken festival goers. Umbrellas hopping on one leg, sake jars wobbling, sandals clapping together. The idea that your household junk could rise up for a party once a century is both hilarious and oddly comforting. Imagine your old toaster showing up at your door one night, demanding karaoke and a round of drinks. The statues circle tighter. One tugs at your sleeve, another tugs your hair. They're not hostile, just insistent, like toddlers demanding attention. You crouch, letting them pat your lantern, their tiny stone fingers tapping the glass curiously. Their smiles widen with each tap until the air fills with a chorus of gravelly giggles. Then, suddenly, they stop. Every head turns in unison toward a larger statue at the far end of the row, untouched by moss, its face serene. For a moment the smaller ones bow deeply. The larger statue remains still, but you feel the weight of its gaze pressing through the stone. It doesn't move, doesn't speak, yet the message hums in the silence. Respect, even in play. The little figures step back, parting a path through their row. You take the hint, bow to the still giant, and step forward. As you pass, the smaller statues hop back onto their pedestals, freezing once more. Their grins harden into harmless stone. Only the faint warmth in your chest reminds you they were ever alive at all. You walk on, shaking your head. First bird demons, then incense-whispering women, then kappa ghost skeletons, and now toy-like statues demanding attention. You can't help muttering. Next time my umbrella breaks, I'm apologizing before tossing it. The mountain wind rustles, as though agreeing. Scholars debate whether Tsukumagami were believed literally or simply as moral allegories, but here, in the silence of the hollow, it doesn't matter. Tonight, the line between object and spirit blurred long enough for you to feel the mischievous joy of things usually ignored. And maybe, just maybe, that joy was a test. The path winds upward again, roots gripping at your ankles like stubborn fingers. Your lantern light wavers against bark scarred with deep gouges, as though claws once raked through the forest. The air sharpens, colder now, and the shadows lean longer. Somewhere far above, a low rumble of thunder rolls. Not a storm, just the growl of something enormous. You crest a ridge and stop. Ahead, half hidden in a curtain of mist, rises a towering figure with wings folded like a mountain against the night sky. A long nose, sharp eyes, feathers ruffled by the breeze. A Tengu. In Japanese folklore, Tengu have always been creatures of contradictions. Half god, half demon. Feared and revered. They're guardians of mountains, but also notorious tricksters, punishing arrogance with humiliation. During the Heian period, Buddhist monks warned that Tengu were fallen priests corrupted by pride. Yet in later centuries, villagers began to honor them as protectors, even deities of war. Samurai sometimes claimed Tengu taught them swordsmanship, whispering secret techniques in the forest. This one stands motionless, carved in moonlight and mist. His staff leans against a cedar trunk, lacquered with glinting with iron fittings. His wings twitch once, scattering droplets. You freeze, waiting for a sign, mockery, or menace. Then the Tengu laughs. Not cruelly, but like a teacher catching a student's mistake. Too noisy, he says, his voice carrying to the mist like a temple bell. Even the stones hear your stumbling. A quirky fact. Stories often paint Tengu as masters of discipline, punishing monks who recited sutras sloppily or samurai who swung their swords lazily. But they weren't always teachers out of kindness. Some texts suggest Tengu enjoyed humiliating humans as sport, carrying them off the mountaintops or leaving them stranded in distant forests. Imagine a mythological prankster professor grading you with tricks instead of red ink. The Tengu steps forward, staff tapping against the ground. You notice his Geta sandals don't sink into the earth, as though he's lighter than air. He studies you, tilts his long nose upward, and finally gestures at the path. Climb higher, he says. If your spirit bends, the mountain will snap it. If your spirit holds, you may pass. Before you can answer, he spreads his wings. A gust whips your lantern nearly out of your hand. The Tengu leaps, vanishing into the mist with a beat of feathers, leaving only silence behind. You stand there, heart hammering. What did he mean? Spirit bending, snapping? Was it a warning? A dare? Or just another Tengu prank? Setting you up for a fall? You tighten your grip on the lantern and mutter, "Guess I'll find out." And as you climb into the thinning air, one thing is certain. Tengu are never just watchers. If you're still on their mountain, it means they're still testing you. The slope softens and the mist thins into strands that trail like silk from cedar branches. You let your lungs settle, each breath carrying pine and damp moss. At last, the path widens into a clearing where the night glows faintly, not from moonlight, but from something nearer. A small paper lantern bobs in the breeze. It shouldn't be there. No one is around to carry it. Yet it sways as though a hand steadies its frame. The glow is warm, amber through rice paper, and a faint face flickers across it. Two slanted eyes, a curved mouth like ink strokes on a scroll. The Chachinobake, an object born from Tsukumagami. The belief that tools and belongings, once they reach 100 years old, awaken with spirits of their own. A lantern abandoned too long, forgotten in some shed, has now decided it deserves a second life. You watch as it drifts closer, bobbing and giggling softly. Its tongue lolls out of the paper frame, comically long, and the eyes narrow in mischief. Some say Chachinobake like to spook humans, leaping suddenly to shout boo, in a voice like sizzling fire. But tonight, it seems gentler, its glow steady, its hum low like a lullaby. Historians still argue whether these yokai were ever genuinely feared, or if they were mostly satirical tales, cartoonish warnings about neglecting everyday tools. After all, Japan in the Edo period had a culture of careful reuse. To let a household object rot away without care was almost shameful. So perhaps these hopping umbrellas and glowing lanterns weren't just bedtime stories, but more reminders. Respect what you own, or it might come back giggling at you. The lantern drifts nearer until its glow splashes across your face. Inside the paper frame, you glimpse shapes like faded brushstrokes, scenes of festivals long gone. Maybe it carries its own memories. Summer nights strung with fire, crowds in yukata, stalls selling grilled squid, children clutching candy apples. A fragment of history stitched into its skin. It circles you once, then hovers at eye level. The tongue droops but doesn't scare. It's absurdly cartoonish, like a toddler's doodle. You snort softly at yourself, who gets unnerved by a lantern's tongue. Add that to your list of things they never warned you about in school. Still, the Chachinobe seems to want something. It lingers, glowing brighter, before floating toward the far side of the clearing. Every few steps you pause, and it bobs impatiently until you follow. Yeah, you mutter, lead the way, O great tongue lantern. A quirky tidbit. In some ukiyo-e prints, artists drew entire armies of tsukumagami parading through the night, old sandals, chipped teapots, even worn-out futons. It was both humorous and eerie, as if to say every corner of your house might secretly be alive. And maybe that's why this little lantern feels more companion than monster. It guides you down a narrower path, with the branches arched overhead like ribs. The air here is gentler, less biting. When you glance back, the clearing is gone, swallowed in dark. Ahead, the lantern hums and pulses with a sleepy rhythm, like the world's oddest nightlight. And for the first time tonight, you realize maybe these yokai don't all test you. Some simply don't want to be forgotten. The paper lantern drifts ahead until it settles at the threshold of a low wooden hut tucked beneath leaning pines. The shutters are crooked and the roof tiles sag, but faint steam curls from a chimney hole. You pause, suspicious, because when in all of human history has an abandoned hut ever led to something wholesome? Still, curiosity yanks you forward. Inside, the air is warmer than you expect. Tatami mats breathe out the smell of straw, and a faint tea fragrance floats in the dim glow. At a low table, a woman kneels. Her kimono is elegant yet faded, patterned with water lilies. Her hair spills like ink down her shoulders, too long, too black, moving even when no breeze stirs. She looks up, and you know instantly, this is no ordinary hostess. A yurei, a ghost. Japanese lore often frames them in terms of loss. Women betrayed, widows left behind, souls bound by unfinished business. Their white burial kimono and loose hair became iconic. So much so that Edo period kabuki plays practically standardized the look. Even today, horror films echo that same figure. Yet here she doesn't glare, doesn't float with menace. She simply pours tea into 2 cups, the steam swirling like mist. She gestures wordlessly. And because refusing tea from a ghost seems like the worst possible social faux pas, you kneel. The cup is warm in your hand, though the liquid inside looks oddly translucent, like memory steeped in water. You sip. It tastes faintly of plum blossoms, faintly of rain, and faintly of something you once forgot, a dream that slips away the moment you wake. The warmth seeps into you, heavy, drowsy. Loneliness lingers, she murmurs finally, her voice soft as rustling silk, even after the body sleeps forever. Historians still argue whether yurei stories sprang mainly from Buddhist teachings about attachment or whether they were shaped by Edo urban legends hungry for drama. Either way, they became more than superstition. They were cultural anchors, explaining why spirits might linger, why grief clung long after funerals ended. The ghost across from you lowers her gaze. A drop of tea trembles at her lip, though it never falls. She chuckles suddenly, low and almost embarrassed. Tea's too weak. I was never good at brewing. That, right there, is your odd tidbit. Some regional ghost tales paint yurei not as terrified, but as clumsy, domestic presences, ghosts who sweep, cook, or fuss at visitors rather than scare them. Imagine your haunted house spirit nagging you about folding laundry. You smile into your cup. Honestly, you whisper, I've had worse. For a moment the room feels strangely human. 2 souls sharing tea, neither quite belonging to the world. Then her gaze lifts again, pupils widening until her eyes are pools of night. The shadows bend at the edges of the hut, stretching like curtains. A chill snakes through your spine even as your eyelids sag. But she only sighs, placing her cup down with both hands. Rest soon, she says, the words trailing like incense smoke. Stories weigh less when you dream them. When you glance back to thank her, the hut is gone. You're kneeling on bare ground beneath the trees, a faint scent of plum blossoms fading into the dark. Only the warmth of phantom tea lingers in your chest. The forest path evens into soft earth, smooth as if countless feet have passed before you. Overhead, the branches arch wide, forming a vaulted tunnel. Then you hear it, the low, rhythmic shuffle of many steps, a collective breath stirring the leaves. Lantern glow blooms at the far end, not one light, but dozens, bobbing together like fireflies caught in procession. You pause, holding your breath, because here comes the Hyaki Yagyo, the night parade of 100 demons. Every yokai you've glimpsed tonight drifts into the clearing. The kappa with her dripping shells, the fox kitsune flicking her tails, the umbrella hopping like it's on a sugar rush. Even the tengu swoops above, wings outstretched, his long nose cutting a silhouette against the moon. They do not threaten. They pass like a river of dreams, each figure carrying a fragment of story. The tanuki drum their bellies. The lantern glows faintly in rhythm. The ghostly woman from the tea hut bows in silence. The procession weaves around you as if you're invisible. A guess aloud but not acknowledged, a mortal spare for night. It feels strangely ceremonial. Historians still argue whether the night parade was meant as genuine folklore, people fearing yokai storms on summer nights, or more satirical art form from the Muromachi and Edo periods. Woodblock prints often exaggerated it, turning old furniture and tools into comical monsters parading through town. But standing here, with 100 shadows brushing past, you can believe both truths at once. The oddest tidbit? In some villages, children were told to hide under futons during these parades, because a single glance at the marching yokai could drive you mad. And here you are not only staring, but practically photobombing the whole thing. Congratulations, you've broken every parental warning in one night. The music grows softer. The parade stretches longer, but each figure fades more translucent, as if they're dissolving into mist. The fox tails vanish first, then the glow of lanterns, then the flap of tengu wings. At last, only whispers remain, thin as smoke, curling around your ears. You realize you've been swaying on your feet, eyelids heavy. The last yokai, a childlike shadow with wide eyes, pauses before you, places a finger to its lips and whispers, "Sleep." Then it too is gone. The forest exhales. The path is empty. And now, with the parade faded into silence, the night grows deep and velvety. You stand still, letting the hush soak into your bones. The trees no longer loom but cradle, their branches a canopy of shelter rather than mystery. Every step you've taken, every story whispered by yokai, folds itself into a gentle afterthought. Your lantern, once flickering and frantic, now glows steady, the way a bedside lamp holds a room in calm. Its light is no longer a defense. It's simply company. The forest itself seems to breathe with you, slow and even, each inhale drawing cool pine, each exhale letting warmth slip away. The voices of the yokai linger only as echoes, softened into lullabies. The kappa's watery hum becomes a trickle of brook. The tanuki's belly drums dissolve into a faint heartbeat. The ghost's words melt into a sigh of wind. One by one, they untangle from your thoughts, until all that's left is stillness. And in that stillness, the line between story and dream blurs. Perhaps you never walked the path at all. Perhaps you've been drifting on the edge of sleep, yokai marching only behind your eyelids. The scholars may debate their origins, artists may sketch their shapes, but here now, they become something simpler, gentle guardians of rest. So as you lie back, whether in bed, on a couch, or wherever this journey found you, let the weight slip from your shoulders. Imagine the lantern glow dimming to a single ember, fading slowly, carefully, until even it is gone. And in the darkness that follows, you are safe. The forest holds you, the yokai have passed, and the night itself leans close to whisper you into sleep. Sweet dreams.